Welcome into episode 82 of the MATC Podcast. This episode concludes our 7-episode journey of the MATC 2020 Spotlight Educators and the ISTE Standards for Educators. So, in this episode, we will have our last MATC Spotlight Educator on, and her name is Rena Hawkins, and she helps us talk about the Analyst Standard for ISTE Standards for Educators. And within this episode, we talk about various things like assessment-capable learners, feedback, alternative forms of assessment, student choice, Flipgrid, Seesaw, iMovie, Adobe Spark, and Liz Bostwick and Eric Carlin make the recommendation list. Let's get started. Welcome to the Midwest Education Technology Communities Podcast, otherwise known as MATC. MATC is a nonprofit organization based out of St. Louis, Missouri, with a mission to motivate, engage, transform, and connect all learners to advocacy, partnerships, and professional learning opportunities. MATC is a premier affiliate of ISTE. To learn more about MATC, follow us on social media at MATC Ed Plus. You may also check out our website at matcedplus.org. MATC is a program of Education Plus. To learn more about Education Plus, go to edplus.org. It is now time to begin our current episode. We thank you for listening and enjoy the learning. And welcome to another episode of the MATC Podcast. This is episode 82 for those keeping track. And this episode concludes our journey of the MATC 2020 Spotlight Educator Series. We've been highlighting each of the ISTE Standards for Educators with our spotlights, and this one concludes both the spotlights and the standards for these mini-series. Our guest is Dr. Rena Hawkins of the Smithville School District, and she helps us dive into the standard and explain what it means and what resources are out there to kind of help us meet this standard. Though we share quite a few resources and they're all available on the show notes at matcedplus.org, we know that our list isn't complete, so we could always use your help, and that brings us to our Twitter challenge for this particular episode. As the last episodes have been, we would like you to share how you are meeting the ISTE Standard for Educator Analyst Standard. What resources, what tools are you using to provide opportunities for students to show proficiency differently? Alternative assessments, or what areas or resources are you using to help provide feedback in a timely fashion, or helping students understand the importance of feedback? What are some different ways you're meeting this standard? So share out on Twitter using the hashtag MATC Podcast and or MATCPD. Greatly appreciate it. Let's get our ideas out there and learn from each other. This episode comes out right after the MATC 20 conference. Hopefully you were there and you had an awesome experience. If not, you missed out. I apologize for that. Hopefully then you can make MATC 2021 next year. We had a lot of featured speakers. We had a lot of MATC Spotlight Educators, as you've heard over the last few months. And we had a lot of students there. We had a lot of different sessions, awesome vendors. It was a great time. And go to our website, matcedplus.org. You can see some of the highlights there. Our YouTube channel will have some as well. Our next episode will actually be interviews from guests at the conference, so that'll be fun to listen to as well. All right, let's go ahead and get on into the next segment of this episode. Hello, everyone listening to the MATC Podcast. This is usually where you will hear the Tech and 60 segment of this show. Instead of that this time, I'm going to guide you over to our YouTube channel. Search Midwest Education Technology Community, and you will see the Tech in 60 playlist there. You can catch all of them there on our YouTube channel. They are pretty awesome to say, even though I say so myself. What I would like to talk to during this quick little segment is the possibility of you being on a future episode of the MATC podcast. Our season 4 is about a month away, and I am building the guest list for that season. And the goal of this podcast is to share the story of innovative educators in our region. So those of you that are listening are one of two things. Either one, are innovative educators doing awesome things that should share your story, and you should reach out to me at JLeeTech%, or you know educators doing awesome things and their story should be shared. So give me their information and reach out to me at JLeeTech% as well. I love sharing the story. I love talking to educators all over the region, so please do so. Help us share the awesome things happening in our schools, both in Missouri, Illinois. I've had some Kansas folks on here as well. Greatly appreciate that. We also have another mini-series that's out there, so it's the MATC Mini-Pod. It's available on Anchor or anywhere else that you can get your podcasts. The purpose of that one is to have a very short episode, 5 minutes or less is the content, and it's focused on one particular tech tool. And it's always done by a community guest. So our community is really anybody listening to this podcast, members of MATC and Education Plus, anybody in the region that wants to share and be innovative together. That's our community. So if you would like to be on an MATC mini-pod, reach out to me as well at JLeeTech%, and we can give you an idea of what topics have been covered or what are going to be covered, and pick a new tech tool, and you can share your ideas and thoughts around that, and then we connect it to an ISTE Standard. Hopefully we'll have a nice library of tech tools for people to reach out and listen to and learn about different tools to use within the classroom. All right, so that's your homework. We are a month away from season 4. Please let me know if you'd like to be on a future episode, or if you know someone that would or should be on a future episode. That would be awesome. Thank you very much. Again, at JLeeTech% on Twitter. Be all greatly appreciated. All right, let's go ahead and get into the main content for this episode, where we talk to Dr. Rena Hawkins on the Analyst Standard of ISTE Standards for Educators. Welcome everybody into the main content for this episode. I have another awesome special guest with me today. She is a MATC 20 Spotlight Educator. Rena Hawkins, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. And you were over in the Smithville School District, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that is where?
Just north of Kansas City. We're about 20 minutes north.
Awesome. And so this will air after the Super Bowl. So we are predicting that they're going to win by a landslide, and we're really excited. So
that's right.
All right. And so let me tell everybody a little bit about you, and then you can add on and fix what I miss, and we'll go from there. So Dr. Rena Hawkins is principal at Maple Elementary School in the Smithville R2 School District. In her 23rd year in education, Dr. Hawkins has served as a teacher, first grade, second grade, and fifth grade, an instructional coach, a K-12 ELA instructional coordinator, and an administrator. In 2018, she was recognized as a new exemplary principal by the Missouri Association of Elementary School Principals organization. She is a 2020 MATC Spotlight Educator. Woo woo. Dr. Hawkins co-hosts the Share.Mo.edu podcast in an effort to amplify positive voices in education. So awesome. What do you want to add, or what did I miss out?
I think you got most of it. I'll add that with the Share.Mo.edu podcast, we are approaching our 2-year anniversary from our startup date, and close to airing 100 episodes. So that is really exciting.
That is awesome. And you co-host that with another one, somebody else, right?
Yes, with my assistant principal, Eric Carlin.
Very cool. And do you focus in on educators within your district, or just in your region, or who do you have on your show?
Across the state. We've had an educator on from Australia, Canada, so
very
beyond
cool.
the US too.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll have that linked in the show notes for sure. And so everybody else can check that out. And I saw that you're a fifth grade teacher. So was I. How long were you a fifth grade teacher?
My very first year.
Awesome. Just one?
Just 1 year. I really thought I'd want to stay in the older grades, but then I was working on my master's in literacy, and it made sense to move to first grade where I was doing more reading instruction. So it's been a lot of time in first and second grade. Gotcha. 1 year in fifth.
Yeah, I started in fourth grade, and then I graduated up to fifth grade after that. And I liked fourth grade a lot better, but fifth grade was all right too. So the second half of fifth grade is always not as good as the first because they're ready for middle school, but we may do.
Right.
So, all right, so you're here to talk about the final ISTE Standard. So all of our sessions at the conference and a lot of the stuff that we do with MATC PD is related to the ISTE Standards. We are an ISTE Standard certification provider. And so all the last 6 episodes, including this is the 7th one, have been focused on each standard. And so we're focusing in on the Analyst Standard this episode. So you ready to share and talk about that?
I am, yes.
All right. So we're going to start off by helping others understand what the Analyst Standard is. So I'm just going to read what the summary of the standard is, and then you kind of just tell me what your thoughts and feelings about the standard around that. So educators understand and use data to drive their instruction and support students in achieving their learning goals. So when you hear that, what does that mean to you?
Well, immediately my mind goes to the fact that our district is part of the Missouri Model District grant. And so we are working on building assessment capable learners in the Smithville School District. We want our students to self-direct their learning, and they need to be in the know about learning expectations and how to monitor growth towards their individual goals. And so I believe that monitoring comes from that data collection, data analysis, feedback, celebrations, and the opportunity to just continue in the cycle of learning. And I think, the entire Analyst Standard is important. It's not only educators that are using the data to drive instruction, but students are also able to use that data in meaningful ways to grow as learners. They're empowered to understand their needs as learners and make decisions about how they will demonstrate proficiency towards goals.
So I think it's a good point that a lot of times when we think about data, we really just think about the admin or teachers looking at that data. But really, within the assessment capable learners, we're focusing in on students getting comfortable with looking at their own data and determining what the effects on that is. Do you see that being beneficial even at the first and second grade level?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about students using like the Seesaw app to show their parents what they're working on at school and choose work that they're proud of to place on that app and send home, they are obviously using data towards their learning to showcase their work.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, I knew that you were in the Smithville was in the Missouri Model Grant District, and that's what my other half of my job is. I work with MATC part-time, but I do work with the grant as well, and it's really neat to see what some of the districts are doing with that, assessment capable learners, and making sure they're creating good common formative assessments and all that stuff like that, and providing good feedback, and it's awesome, and it's great to hear that that's a big part of your district and building as well. So you mentioned Seesaw, and it's a good point. So we're going to go right on into that first indicator where it talks about how you assess students. And so what are some of your favorite tools to help accomplish that assessment piece?
I think any app that allows students to explain their thinking or create a visual to express their thinking are probably my favorite tools. Just allowing that creative piece, the critical thinking. So tools like Flipgrid, iMovie, Adobe Spark. If they can do any app smashing with Doink and use our green screen, I love to see that. Creating on Canva, I've mentioned Seesaw already.
So you mentioned a lot of apps that aren't, you didn't mention Google Forms or your good old-fashioned paper pencil with multiple choice, stuff like that. So you really believe in the alternative assessment piece?
I do. I believe in choice. So maybe some students might choose paper pencil or, a poster board, but I think there's also apps that they can utilize and demonstrate their thinking that way too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love watching on Twitter the different ways people use Flipgrid, Adobe Spark to kind of help assess their learning. And in Seesaw, I never used it within the classroom because it wasn't really around. And when it first came out, it was really more of a pre-K kindergarten kind of thing. It's definitely graduated beyond that for sure. But yeah, I hear that's an awesome way to kind of keep everybody know for digital portfolios and stuff like that too. Very cool. So you do talk about Google surveys for quick surveys, for almost like formatives, right?
Right. So when you think about, yes, those quick surveys, Google survey is definitely a way to do it. Google Docs, even Kahoot, just a fun game to check in on students' understanding.
Absolutely. Quizzes comes to mind as well.
Yes.
All right. So then the second indicator expands on that first one and talks about formatives and summatives. And a key piece with that would be the feedback, which you mentioned the very first question. We talked about the summary of the standard, feedback being a big part of that. So what are some tools you use or your teachers use to help provide that feedback? And we know that effective feedback is timely. So what are some ways they are doing that?
So thinking personally, I'm frequently on Twitter, find someone who gives me some feedback or makes a comment. We may go deeper into the conversation, and then I realize I need to talk to this person. So I feel like I receive feedback best by talking to them, and sometimes they're not in the same state or the same city. And so a Google Hangout, a Zoom video is a great way to just talk to another administrator from across the US and get some feedback on ideas. Maybe even a program we want to implement. But thinking about students too, if they're blogging, that opportunity to provide feedback on blogs is important. I know I have a blog. I'm not a frequent blogger, want to get better at that, but I crave the feedback. I crave the comments. Those are important to me to see what people think and what they say about my blog. So I think too, when you can offer comments through Google Docs, that's important. When you can record the feedback, Screencastify or Vocaroo are both great spots to do that.
No, yeah, I love getting feedback as well. I wish I get more of it. I remember going through just the evaluation process, and I won't say the administrator name, but the evaluations weren't always very helpful. I'm like, okay, so can I improve on anything? I know I'm far from perfect. Where can I grow, and how about this and that kind of thing? And so being able to provide effective feedback is very key. How are you helping teachers teach the students to provide that feedback as well?
Well, we are a Kagan district, so everybody is trained in cooperative learning. And when I think about how we use the coaching piece of Kagan, and we teach students to coach each other through different structures and provide feedback that way, there's a really important piece there in that coaching and how to train students to coach or give feedback effectively. I think the classroom culture, the climate is really important. You have to develop a place where students are active participants. No one's hiding, kind of like Kagan preaches. There's no hogs or logs. Everyone's participating equally. It's a collaborative group. It's a safe environment. Students can be compassionate towards each other, mutual respect. You teach them a way to disagree appropriately with students or offer feedback or advice in a way that's caring and kind. So I think developing those classroom management systems and expectations that are appropriate for students and just make students feel like it's a safe place to take risks.
Yeah, so that classroom culture and relationship piece really comes back into place. It always seems to make its way in there as it's an important piece of that classroom. No, I agree. I think that having students even just be having a role model, someone that has seen their teacher provide that effective feedback, can be very beneficial as well. And I think that we've hit on some different ways to give feedback. So you said you will sometimes connect through virtual connections, whether it's Hangout or Zoom, but you also leave some written feedback in docs. And so there's many different types of feedback, so it doesn't always have to be the same. I think that's what some teachers will forget too. And we also mentioned metacognition really kind of plays into that feedback piece too, because you want to get them to think about their own work too. So sometimes that feedback can really almost just kind of help them walk themselves through their work and ask the right questions to get the answers from them, and then you can have those conversations through that way too. So I love having that experience as well. So you've got a lot of different ways. I know you used to talk about Kagan. Any other structures do you may have in place within the classrooms that may affect that culture or the ability for students to get that feedback they need?
Well, maybe if we switch from students to teachers,
Yep.
encouraging teachers to look at data, give feedback to other teachers, be able to ask safe questions like, tell me how your students are doing so well when mine are struggling with this skill. We also have to have the safe environment for teachers. One structure that comes to mind for analyzing data is Diane Sweeney's structure. Just again, it's similar to a Kagan structure, but for adults, where everybody is providing feedback as we look at this data, and then together we're brainstorming ideas.
That's a good point. Yeah, having that safe environment for teachers is huge. As we help teachers get out of that silo and realizing that those aren't your two students, they're everybody's students, and we're all here to help them grow. We have a workbook, data workbook that we help teachers use, and it's a big piece of helping meet the indicators and having those conversations. Okay, here's where they're struggling, and it shows where students break out into different groups. And we have conversations with teachers and say, okay, so teacher A, half the students are failing on this pre-assessment or the mid-assessment, whatever. Teacher B, they're all proficient already. Does that mean teacher A is better or worse than teacher B? That's not what it's about, right? Because I've actually heard a comment from a teacher going, man, you got some bad kids. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so the principal and I kind of really hunkered down in on that. And like, that's not the environment, the culture we want to promote. We want to say, okay, what can we do to help each other? Because even though they're in your class, we're going to help you meet those students' needs. And so, you bring up a good point with that environment piece there. So looking at that next indicator, it talks about using data effectively and communicating the data to all stakeholders. All right, so we've talked about the environment for teachers, and then we talked about how we get the environment in the classroom culture for students as well. How are you communicating effectively the data to all stakeholders? So whether it's the board, whether it's parents, whether it's community, that kind of thing.
Well, we're currently working on our building school improvement plan, and just thinking about, what we want to ask PTO for funds next year. We've got some fundraisers coming up, and we have to tell our stakeholders what our plan is for the money we raise. I just really feel like everything we're asking for should be tied to a building goal, a building initiative, and then the data needs to come along with that piece. So we have to inform our initiatives, student achievement and the building and district goals. And we need to be able to show our stakeholders that we're operating effectively or making growth or plans for growth towards our goals. And then also celebrating student achievement needs to be a priority.
Yeah, celebration, absolutely. Yeah, we had a celebration committee, and there was a bunch of fifth grade students, and they were tasked to figure out how to celebrate various things. And down to, I think they came up with we did a once a month Friday afternoon assembly for all schools, and they created like a little like an achievement thing they gave the teachers, and so it was pretty neat to see what the students came up with. But it was all about just celebrating good work, good habits, and good overall behavior kind of thing. So it was pretty cool to see them do that, and it was all generated by the students. And so sometimes we get out of the way and let the other stakeholders take hold of things. It'd be pretty cool. But sometimes we forget that the community can offer some pretty awesome resources and ideas to help meet our goals. And I love that you said everything is geared toward those goals. If you make goals, you don't actually focus in on them. What's the purpose of making them, right?
Right.
Yeah, good. All right, so I hear this next part I get all the time, and I've got an answer for myself, but I'm gonna let you answer it first, obviously. So sometimes teachers feel they have too much data. So how do you respond to an educator who might feel in that way?
Well, I think as a leader, I would have to reflect on how I'm helping teachers to analyze the data. So if teachers feel like they're overburdened, I would wonder if they're effectively using it, and are they able to stay out of the weeds and prioritize their learning goals and look at what's most important So I feel like it would be my job to help teachers get into the practice of backing up their instructional decisions with student work or data, and starting with authentic student data that's easy to analyze, and then just continue to provide support.
Yeah, it's good. I think the effective piece and the prioritized piece is good. Sometimes we take so much data, but the data is not really meaningful. It's not about that priority of learning goals. And I think you focusing in on that would be very, very helpful for an instruction for an educator.
So I also mentioned Diane Sweeney earlier, and she talks about when that data is too overwhelming and maybe teachers are just looking at test scores. Really, let's just look at their work from today. Let's do work samples. Let's start there. And so there is a blog post here that I've linked that goes back to her talking about that and that process.
Good. Yeah, that'll be in the show notes, Diane Sweeney's post on that. And so as you get your groups, your teams together and they talk about data, does that also seem to help that they are actually focusing and working together on student data instead of individually? Does working as a team within the student data help within that overall?
Absolutely. I think that PLC time is so important. Ours operates on Wednesday mornings, and so they're all going on at the same time. And I've been in buildings in the past where it seemed like I was the one to lead the PLC meetings, but here you can see it's run very effectively. They're all going on at the same time. They're analyzing their student data, making data-driven decisions. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have a leader, instructional coach that can really help get that off the ground. As a person as an educator has been a part of beginning the PLC process within a district, I know that I've dealt with educators saying I don't have time for PLCs. I have to go plan for my lessons. I have to go make copies and stuff. I kept saying, well, that means we're not understanding, or we're not putting in the right definitions, or what the word I'm looking for, but we're not putting the right strategies in place to help you understand what PLC really means, because it does mean planning, and it does mean setting up who's making copies and who's creating this and that kind of thing. And so we were really struggling with just the overall process. But once you get it humming, it really can help make the teacher feel less overwhelmed on the overall process too.
Agree. Yes.
So as we come toward the end of this main content here, it's all been about data, which I know is super exciting. I tried to get like 100 people to be on the show, but they're all like, no, I don't want to talk about data. So luckily you are a leader of a building that's all about it. So that worked out really well. I'm going to give you a chance to just some closing thoughts around why educators, listeners should be focusing in on student data, but also helping their students focus in on data as well.
Okay, well, I think as we try to build assessment capable learners, it's important that students not only understand the standards, can look at examples of strong work and weak work, but they know how to get themselves to the end point. So they are taking feedback that we are giving through their work, maybe even their peers are giving through their work, and moving towards those goals. So it's not only educators looking at data to drive instruction, but students looking at data and knowing how to drive themselves to proficiency.
Awesome. And that does not have to be just high school students. That is K all the way up through high school. Remember
That's
that.
right.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I want to thank you very much, Renee, for being with us and talking about data and sharing your journey as well. I greatly appreciate that. And congratulations on being a Spotlight Educator as well.
Thank you. Thanks
Absolutely.
for having me.
Absolutely. So all the information will be in the show notes. Go to metcedplus.org, and on the communications tab, you will find the show notes there, and the blog posts mentioned will be there, and then links to the different resources that Renee talked about will be linked there as well. And I'm going to hold Renee over for the METC mission questions, so we will be right back for those. All right, welcome back into the MATC mission segment of this episode. I have kept our guest, Rena Hawkins, Dr. Rena Hawkins from the Smithville School District over. Welcome back, Rena.
Thank you.
All right, and these are super tough questions, so good luck. Don't be nervous. Just answering the first thing that comes to your mind. All right, so the M in MATC stands for motivate. What motivates you?
Empowering students and teachers to get excited about teaching and learning motivates me.
Awesome. And E stands for engage. How do you engage your students or staff in your case?
I continue to share our story. So when we know our teachers and learners and celebrate their teaching and learning and individual stories, they have an internal drive to do and share more. And I think it's important that we build each other up, connect, share, and celebrate.
Absolutely. T is for transform. What is an area in which you have transformed or helped others transform?
We have transformed our morning announcements. So we used to use the intercom and do morning announcements there, but we have switched to use the Live to Air Action app on an iPad, and students run our morning announcements, students anchor our morning announcements, and it's really exciting. One thing I'm presenting on at MATC.
Awesome. So I'll come on after this particular answer here. So C is for connect. Who are you connected with that others should connect with as well?
Well, we are celebrating Phenomenal February. It's right around the corner. We hashtag that at our school. So I'm going to focus on people in my network that pump the positive and spread kindness. And these are some people that will be on our ShareMo.edu podcast soon. So I say follow Tamara Letter at Tamara Letter or her hashtag Passion for Kindness. Written to Speak, it's at Written to Speak, that's Tanner Olson, he's a poet. At Eliza Bostwick or Liz Bostwick, author of Take the Leap, her hashtag is Leap Effect. And then Thomas Murray, so hashtag or at Thomas Murray has written the book Personal and Authentic, and it's a book that our staff is currently reading and doing a Twitter chat over. His hashtag is Authentic EDU. And then I have to do a shout out to my assistant principal and my partner in crime on the ShareMo.edu podcast at Eric_Carlin, Eric Carlin.
Awesome. And so the link to their podcast will definitely be in the show notes. Check that out and go and follow and subscribe to theirs as well. So I want to go back to that T transform and that morning announcements thing. It's really cool. And the fact that you're going to be at MATC. So give us a little more information about what you'll be sharing at MATC, if you don't mind.
So it's actually in the playground. You can come and try the app. I will have it set up. I'll walk you through it. I will have some sample scripts that we've used in our school, so you can anchor the announcements. You can try it out. You can write your own script. We have some fun ideas for our school scripts too. We do You Matter Monday, and so our counselor's on every Monday with a message. We do a Throwback Thursday where we put up a staff picture. I shouldn't say old, an old staff picture. We put up a staff picture from their grade school, one of their grade school pictures, and then announce who it is on Friday. We do hashtag Tell a Joke Tuesday and add jokes to the announcements.
Awesome. A lot of fun. Yeah, that definitely seems a little more engaging than the old intercom phone system.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say old on that either, but. Awesome. Well, Rena, thank you very much for sharing how you are living MATC's mission. I can't wait to see and learn from you at our conference in a week. I know we're sharing this out after the conference is over, but hopefully you got enough out of Rena from the conference. If not, now you have a podcast with her, and then you should be following her podcast and checking her out there too. So thanks again very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, that brings this episode to a close. I'd like to give a big shout out to our MATC Spotlight Educator, Rena Hawkins, for being on our show. Greatly appreciate that. That's amazing. And I will say this because I'm recording before the MATC conference, but I know she's going to do an awesome job at that conference. So I want to thank her and all of our spotlights for being at our conference and sharing their awesomeness with our participants. They are doing innovative things in their school community, and we are lucky to have them as part of our Spotlight Educators and share their awesomeness. So thanks to all of you for being at our conference and being on all of these episodes as part of this Spotlight Educator series. I also want to thank you all for completing the ISTE Standards for Educators. So we concluded all 7 ISTE Standards for Educators, talked about all 7 of them, awesome stuff. So I'm going to put these in a playlist all by themselves. You can find that on a YouTube channel. If you want to listen to them on YouTube, you can do that and learn a little bit more about all of the ISTE Standards. Remember, MATC is an authorized provider for the ISTE Standard certification. It is quite a process that just will change your education career. I think that. Now, I guess depending on how you teach now, that may or may not be true, but it just forces you to think of teaching differently, asking to think differently about how you assess, how you give feedback, how you design your overall space and your classes and your lessons. And so there's a lot that goes into the certification, and it's very meaningful. So if you want to learn more about that, I would head over to the website at matcedplus.org for more information on that certification process. It is pretty valuable, and reach out to me if you have any other questions at JLeeTech%. This is our last normal episode of Season 3. The final episode of Season 3 will be some interviews from the MATC conference, and there'll also be probably some highlights from Season 3 from all of our guests we've had this year. We've had a great season. We've had a lot of downloads. Greatly appreciate you checking us out. Feel free to share this with anybody that you would like to. Our mission is to share our story of our educators, so we want to share it with as many people as we can. We've got some awesome educators in our region, so thank you for listening, thank you for downloading, and for sharing. Greatly appreciate that. Don't forget, if you know innovative educators that should be on this show, reach out to me, building our guest list for the Season 4 coming up, and I'm excited about who we already have on the list, and excited about the potential of who could be on that list. So thank you very much again for checking us out. And until the next episode, have a good one. Thank you for listening to the Midwest Education Technology Communities Podcast, otherwise known as MATC. To learn more about MATC, check out our website at matcedplus.org or follow us on social media at MATC EdPlus. To learn more about Education Plus, go to edplus.org.